Hello everyone and welcome to the first episode of my brand new series, the Pokemon Podcast. Here with me we've got David, who is going to be my co-host throughout this series. We will have some guest hosts coming in every now and then, but if you're not aware of my channel yet, I do Pokemon Nuzlocke as live streams and this podcast as a series. This podcast is hopefully going to help people who are new to the competitive battling format actually get into it, as well as discuss up and coming events, such as at the moment we have Gen 8 about to come out, and we will be discussing that in later episodes. But without any further ado, let me introduce my good friend, David.
Hey guys, how's it going? David here. Really looking forward to doing this.
David, why don't you tell them a bit about your channel?
Well, about my channel. So I do pretty much everything that relates to Pokemon. Battling, shiny hunting. There's a new series I'm looking to start as well, where we take a Pokemon, look at it, and build. I know Alice is going to be co-hosting that with me, so that will be fun as well. So, yeah.
If you would,
pretty much all things Pokemon.
If you would like to see David's channel, I will be linking it in the description of each of these videos, as he will be in them as a co-host. So, let's see what do we have on the list for today, David.
Let me just get the list up. There we go. So, about the series... Well, we've already done about the series. So, first thing we're going to be doing is looking at getting into competitive battling, I think.
So what is involved in that? I know that you remember the good old days of when you were brand new to competitive battling. Why don't you tell us about your journey?
The old days isn't far off. So I originally started off with... I wouldn't say it was even competitive battling at that stage. It was... If anyone remembers Battle Subway in Gen 5...
I think we all remember those.
Yeah. That was a fun experience. And then I was really, really getting into that, and it was getting to the point where it was becoming competitive just to actually complete it. So I then decided, hey, let's have a look on Showdown. I had heard it from a friend, which is essentially a battle simulator where I learn mainly single format battles at that time. I wasn't into VGC at that stage. Just stuck with Smogon's OU and underused tiers. And just built using my favourite Pokemon, and usually get my backside handed to me on a silver plate, but I enjoyed it nonetheless. And just over time, progressively learnt more, tried new things out, and basically it was just a case of trial and error.
Well, I mean, starting with your favourite Pokemon is a very good way of getting into the game in the first place anyway. So, I started, going back multiple years now. I started basically trying competitive back in Gen 3, but I didn't really get into it properly until Gen 6 was out. But I remember the good old days of having to use Alakazam and try to make it good despite its frail body.
Wow. Yeah. To be fair, Alakazam was pretty broken though at that point.
Oh, it's always been broken. Changed my mind. The good thing about Alakazam is its speed and its special attack. So the way I used to try to build it, I tried to build it so it could survive a few hits. Soon I realized that's not what it's meant to do. What it's meant to do is come in, wreck house, and then leave no witnesses. But you have to build around that. So a simple way of doing that would be to have recover if you're up against special attack, or if you're not expecting to be up against special attackers, maybe try running things like Calm Mind. So if you get a chance to set up, you can. But you always want to try to have at least 3 attacking moves. One of which is always going to be Psychic, for a very good reason. It's Stab, and what Stab does is it boosts the damage that an attack deals if it is of the same type as the attacker. So if you're using a psychic type like Alakazam, psychic is going to do, I think it's 1.5 more. Is it, David?
Yeah, it's 50% more. Yeah,
Yeah. So it does
but that
times
applies to the
1.5.
base power, not the damage.
Yeah, base power times 1.5. So with a move like psychic, which is power 90, you're going to be doing a power 135's move. So that's taken into consideration, I believe, before the whether or not it's super effective, which would mean you'd be doing a heck of a lot if it's super effective.
Yeah, basically it just modifies the base power of the attack you're using. So if the attack type and the Pokemon's type match, it gives an additional 50% boost to that base power from the attack.
Sorry, guys, my allergies are actually coming in here. So,
Now
what
someone's cutting onions, really.
no, but so why don't you talk a bit more about how you got into it? What sort of Pokemon did you use to get into it?
Well, this was back when the weather wars were perfectly acceptable. So I know it around the time, like when it first came out, I was using Excadrill T-Tar.
So that's Excadrill with Tyranitar.
Yeah,
trying
and
to
then
play with the
Excadrill
Saiyans.
got banned. So I was very unhappy at that stage.
Bit
So
like me
I
with
started...
Raisin.
Yeah, so I started using Pokemon like Galvantula for momentum. Obviously, Galvantula is now my mascot from those times. And yeah, for me it was Pokemon I typically used: Chandelure, Galvantula, and then sort of like I then sort of went to a rain mode, but then was rain ever banned?
Not as far as I was aware.
I know it did eventually get banned.
Well, that wasn't until Gen 6 with the
Yeah.
Swampert, Mega Swampert running everywhere.
Yeah. So I also like to use Pokemon like Darmanitan just because it looks like a truck and it hits like one.
It's a bit similar to how my mascot became Ferrothorn, actually. In the early days, it was going to be a Alakazam, but I realized that the Pokemon I was most known for when it comes to competitive was always Ferrothorn. So I found my preferred battling methods to be actually just trucking every hit and then hitting back harder, which suited Ferrothorn and Avalugg perfectly. I quickly grew a name for myself as the Ferrothorn user, because no one ever saw anyone using Ferrothorn until they saw me, in which case they realized that they're about to not get through with any physical hits. Although it does drop to fire type hits rather sadly, but yeah, so that's how I got my name, and that's how I got my channel mascot, actually through competitive battling. So what can people do to get into competitive battling? I think the best thing you could do is learn from a friend, or learn from listening to this series. We're going to help you get into competitive battling, and we'll teach you the basics, and you can learn more from any friends you know that actually go to tournaments. So
Yeah.
I would suggest definitely seek out some friends that play competitive, listen to the podcast, maybe communicate with us. We'll be happy to answer questions in the chat in the
comment
in
section.
the comment section, not the chat.
That's what it's called.
I am so used to streaming. Okay, this is new for me. But yeah, if you leave your questions in the comment section, we'll answer them for you.
No, most definitely.
So, what are the essentials for team building, David?
Ooh. Essentials for team building are things that you will need across multiple team projects. So things like you'll want all of your TMs, you'll want a lot of the key hold items that see common use. Things for breeding, so you'll want like Everstones, Destiny Knots to assist with that side of things. You'll want your EV training items, which are your, I think, what, Power Band.
Yeah, the power items.
Yeah, the power items. You'll also want, I would say, quite a nice stock of PP ups and PP maxes as well.
Definitely.
To be able to maximise the times you can use each attack.
And it's good to bear in mind that with the EV boosting items such as calcium and the likes, they boost. You can use them up to 10 times. They'll boost your EVs by exactly 10 each time, up to 100. Then you could that would give you a good base start. I wouldn't suggest you max everything out to max two things out to 100 unless you're planning to go higher. But always keep track of how many EVs you're using. So if you're going out into the wild and battling for the EVs, make sure you know what each Pokemon gives you. And the only time you get EVs from that battle is if you get any experience. So if you were to say run away, you wouldn't get any EVs. So if you don't want to look up ahead of time what each route has, then as you come across these Pokemon in the wild, look up what their EV grant is, and then decide, do you want that EV or do you want to run away? So try to have an idea.
Cerebee's Pokedex, for each Pokemon, lists the EVs that they yield upon defeat.
So
that was a very good resource for that.
Another good resource is you don't have to battle with that Pokemon. Like I said, you only need to get the experience.
Yeah. Which is a good thing, because now, with the EXP share the way it works now, is you can have one Pokemon doing all the fighting and 5 Pokemon at back gaining experience, but they're also gaining the EVs from the fight because they're gaining experience with it. Which means that you can now train 5 Pokemon at a time.
This is why the XP share has become an invaluable source for competitive battling. Although it yields no assists in the actual competitive battles, it will give you the setup you need to get to there.
Yeah. It helps you get the Pokemon to the level they need to be at with the EVs they need. And obviously when they're at that level, obviously they're then able to battle competitively. Another thing I would also suggest is having a nice stock of Dittos. I know Friend Safari in X and Y had, I think, was it 2 guaranteed?
I have no idea,
and then Dex Naving in Oras, I believe, gave you a minimum of 3 if it had a 3-star potential.
I'm sorry that I was laughing there. Basically, nice. I only ever use 1, and I do it the hard way, guys. Don't be like me. Don't do it the hard way. Be sensible. Have 1 of each nature. The reason why we say 1 of each nature is that means you are going to have a guaranteed nature if you use the
There is another way around that, which is something that I find useful myself personally, and that's there's 25 different natures. 5 of those natures do nothing.
Yeah.
So I actually use a Pokemon that gets the ability Synchronize for all of the 20 natures that actually have a plus-minus effect on the stats.
And this way, you will guarantee that you will have the nature you want on the Pokemon you're trying to breed, which would save you a lot of time in getting Dittos. You would only need 1 6IV Ditto. And to correct what I did...
Ideally, but
and to correct what I said earlier, when I said that... Destiny, when I said to use Destiny Knot, I realized that I had that wrong. Destiny Knot passes down the... I think it's 5 guaranteed IVs?
It's 5 IVs.
Yeah,
but it can sometimes still be 4 because it can pick, say, the attack of the female and then the attack of the male, which then overrides that pick. But usually it selects 5 of the 12 different IVs as opposed to only 3.
Yeah, and It's the Everstone that I meant to say that passes down the nature.
Yeah.
Which is why I do it the hard way. I always have like Everstones and then put them onto the Pokemon which I plan to breed because I breed a lot. So there's different types of competitive battlers, guys. There are the breeders. These are the people whose main aspect for competitive battling is to breed competitive Pokemon. They don't plan to use them, but they plan to breed them and then distribute them so people can get into it. These are the people who will help you get into your competitive battling by helping you get the team. Then there are the trainers. These are the people who actually try to train up the Pokemon. They enjoy the most fun they have out of competitive battling is the preparing these Pokemon for battle ready. So they'll take a bred Pokemon that is the right amount of IVs. They'll go out, train this thing up because it gives them something to do. Then they'll either pass it back on to the breeder, who will then distribute it to a competitive battler, or they'll pass it on to a competitive battler directly. So these are the three different types of people. The competitive battlers are the ones who go out and actually compete. They go out to these tournaments, they compete in them, or they'll compete with friends, or they'll compete online in online tournaments. But that's the three different types of competitive battlers. These people that they might all come under the same banner, but they're very, very different people.
I would say there is also a fourth one, which I think I fall into the category of. I will breed the Pokemon, I will then train them, and I will battle with them and or distribute them.
I think that would still fall under, because I do the same thing, but I prefer to fall under the competitive battler role. But I also would say, I would agree with you that there is a fourth, and that is actually the sort of a second role which I fall under, which are the teachers. The teachers are the people who actually pass on their knowledge. So they typically would be veterans. That's another way to talk to refer to them as veterans. We have played competitive for many years, and we wish to pass our knowledge down onto the next generation of competitive battlers.
Well, I'd certainly like to do that before I end up retiring, but yeah.
But I mean, I'm not retired from competitive battling. I still do it from time to time, but I now wish to pass on the knowledge I have gained to help the next generation of competitive battlers come into the game. That's sort of why I made this podcast, because I figured I want to pass this knowledge on. I have all this knowledge for competitive battling, but I wanted to find some way of getting it out there. So that would be the fourth type.
Well, yeah, and I'm very much the same in that regards. With obviously wanting to pass my knowledge down, make the next generation of battlers more powerful than us veterans.
I mean,
because that helps the competitive aspect grow.
I've certainly made the start, and yes, I agree. We want the next generation to be even better than us. We want them to be better, and I never managed to reach the title of world or regional, but I would definitely like to help the next person get up there. And the only reason I haven't achieved those is because I haven't actually gone out to VGC. I am a Smogon player, but I live in the UK. Right. The issue there is Smogon no longer does their world tours every year, which makes it very hard for me to actually go and compete. I do play VGC, but it's not my favourite format, so I never aspired to be the best there. Obviously, David, you're the opposite. You prefer VGC compared to Smogon.
Hey, I'll just battle as long as someone wants to make it a close battle. That's fine by me. I mean, yeah, I do specialise more towards the VGC side of things now, and doubles. But I used to be exactly like Alice, singles format, Smogon strictly, just Smogon, nothing else.
Meanwhile, I used to be VGC. I battled VGC vigorously. I even remember my team for my first VGC tournament. Oh, the good old days of Mega Alakazam and feigning a Mega Scizor, along with...
Hang on. Mega Alakazam in a Mega Kangaskhan Sucker Punch heavy meta?
Yes, and it actually did well. I had a Mega Scizor and I had a Mega Alakazam. I'd bring one or the other and they would have to guess which one.
Now, see, that would have worked a lot better nowadays because of Tapu Lele being able to block priority attacks.
Well, that's the thing. I use Mega Sizzle primarily with a Kyogre Primal to remove
Ugh.
my fire weakness.
Ugh, I don't like primals.
Yes, I know you don't like primals, but that was my team. I had I had a Hypno for sleep Dream Eater shenanigans. I had a Ferrothorn for the bulkiness. I had my Kyogre. I had my Sizzle. I had my Alakazam, and I think the last one, if I remember correctly, was a Butterfree.
Doesn't that get follow me?
No, it was for Quiver Dance.
Yeah, but I mean, doesn't it get follow me?
I think it does.
Or Rage Powder or something.
I can't remember if it was Butterfree or which one it was. I know I had another attacker and it was a setup one, but I can't remember exactly what it was. I believe it was Butterfree though.
Oh, jeez.
Hey, I got to 7th in my first ever VGC.
You got to 7th with a Butterfree?
Yes.
How?
Mostly for...
When? Why?
Mostly because it never even came out.
Well, yeah, that would sum it
People
up.
had to. People had to first. Oh no, sorry, it was Dragonite. No, I didn't bring the Butterfree in that one. I considered it, but I brought Dragonite as my setup. Yeah. So basically, it was Dragonite with D-Dance, Earthquake, Outrage, and can never remember the fourth move because I never even used it.
Hopefully, if you were sensible, you'd be packing something like Extreme Speed.
Oh yes, it was Extreme Speed for the priority, yeah. But mostly it was just Sizzle plus Kyogre. That's the thing that you guys need to remember is sometimes you'll find yourself prioritizing 2 mons. Those would be your 2 strongest mons, and the rest would back you up and come in and sweep afterwards. But the thing about BGC is you only ever brought in 4 Pokemon at a time. That's why I was willing to have 2 Megas. So I had 2 Megas and I would switch it because it's a best of 3 format where you would have a chance to switch your Pokemon in the second game. And that's actually how I rose actually 4 places in the final round because I beat the person because I got paired up and beat the guy with a Hypno he did not see coming. Because I never used it in the tournament until that one round. And
So,
I hid one of my mons because I could see that everyone was crowding around to see my battle because my battle was taking the longest due to my natural bulkiness on Ferrothorn and Kyogre. So everyone was crowding around to see it, and I figured I would hide one Pokemon. That one Pokemon I had every intention to use in the last round. And I purposely did not use it because I wouldn't need to. This meant that I had a natural advantage in the final round of his mons had all been used. Everyone had seen his mons, but I had that one trump card which would come in and just catch him off guard, essentially. But how did your first tournament go, David? Do you remember it?
I do. It was in 2017, and I'm trying to remember. There was like... I only sort of placed midfield, but it was first experience of actually going to an actual in-life event, which was completely new to me.
That's what I did.
And I would do so again. The only trouble is it is a little bit costly. I'm not gonna hide that fact. I'm gonna be very transparent with it.
It definitely is.
It did cost a lot to make it happen.
You have to be prepared to pay the money for the entry cost. So entry costs are a thing, guys.
Oh, the entry cost isn't the thing that's the issue. It's the actual getting there.
Oh, right.
That was expensive.
I'm used to the entry cost being the actual thing. I mean, yes, getting to these big tournaments are going to be costly. So things where you'd go overseas to play, such as Worlds or National or Regionals and...
Well, just my regionals, to be fair, I probably spent about £550, £600 all in, including tournament.
Yeah, because
entry,
you have to enter, you have to get a hotel, you have to get there.
travel.
It's definitely a costly way to go, guys, if you wanted to go that
However,
way.
however, I will say the experience was well worth it.
Oh, definitely. I agree.
Without a doubt, I met some wonderful people there along the way. In fact, a couple of them I actually still speak to this day.
It's the same with me and my trading card games. So,
And I learned a lot.
yeah, even with trading card games, guys, being a competitive trading card game player, it is definitely costly. Obviously, if you're using a breeder, if you're not the kind of person who is confident enough to breed and raise your Pokemon, so if you're using the breeders and trainers, they sometimes cost a bit as well. Um, David, I'm not sure if you have any experience in that, but I know that some people charge £20 or £30 per Pokemon just for the time that is put into it.
That side of things I don't go through personally.
Yeah, I personally breed my own Pokemon.
What I do is I plan something that I'm building for a team of mine, something which we'll cover with team planning in a little while.
Yeah.
But what I would usually do is I'd usually plan my team, go, right, okay, so I need this Pokemon, and this. And I go, right, how many variants of each set do I want? You know, just something with a slightly different move. And I'll breed like 2 or 3 of the same thing. But then I'll go, why not breed 5 or 6 or 7? And then I've got a few that I can send off to other people, basically. So it's usually just spares
Obviously,
that I have floating around.
Obviously, I go down that route as well. But when I first started out, I didn't know what I was doing when it came to breeding. I didn't know how to track IVs back in Gen 5. Obviously, something that's been easier now because of with the IV checker. But we'll go into that later.
Oh, it's got, like, honestly,
it
when
is a
you actually see
lifesaver.
how easy it is to breed Pokemon and stuff like that now compared to how it was back in Gen 5 and Gen 4, because IVs were just a percentage chance to be passed down at one point.
Yeah.
And really stupid things like that. Like, you guys have it good.
We had to go the hard
Just
way.
count yourself lucky that you don't have to deal with the nonsense RNG that we did and the mechanics we had to deal with, because if they put those mechanics back in, I'd be like, nope, I'm done, and walk off.
Oh, sorry, guys.
I could never go back to those mechanics.
Sorry, guys, I didn't mute myself in time there. But basically, it was a lot harder back then, and for my first tournament, I wasn't prepared for that, so I had to go to a breeder and a trainer. Thankfully, I found someone who was both. But he told me that normally he would charge £25 to £30 per Pokemon.
Yeah, to me that's not ethical.
It's not ethical, but obviously they are giving up their own time, and some people do it for a living. It's not nice. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. It is out there. Obviously, if you have,
it's even worse now with people who gen things.
Yeah, people who gen things
because
in.
They're getting it instantly.
Yeah, and they ask for like shinies or actual money, but it's not ethical. I'm not gonna lie. I don't agree with it. I do agree with breeders and people who help others get the Pokemon, but I don't agree with people who charge for it.
I could understand if someone breeds something and then, like, if it's something that they're doing and obviously it takes their time.
Yeah.
If someone wants to donate to that, then that's a completely different story. But they should not ask flat out for a payment for something. It's disgusting, and it's also against their terms of service, I believe.
I'm not sure about whether it's against the terms of service, but I'm just letting people know that
it would, because they're actually selling in-game content which they don't actually own.
I didn't want to go through that aspect of the legal aspect. Obviously, I was just trying to tell people that it is out there. I do want people to be aware that it's out there, and I want them to be prepared that, yes, it's all well and good to find a breeder. It's all well and good to find a trainer. But be aware that some people may charge, and if they do, there are people out there that will do it for free. So you could find a friend, for example. I found a friend that did it. That's why I didn't have to pay him. He was a friend of mine, so he wanted to help me get into competitive. So he did it for free. But I was lucky that he was my friend. Someone who's not your friend might charge. I don't want to scare you off of asking people for help with this, but I just want you to be aware that it's out there.
Personally, I would say your best bet is if you have something like Discord or like a Pokemon sort of group.
Nintendo has started setting up in each area. I'm not sure if this has gone outside of the UK yet, but Nintendo, for example, in Wales, in the UK they have Nintendo Southwest, Southeast, South, North, Northwest, Northeast. Every area has a Nintendo sponsored group. They set up a competition.
We have an unofficial one here in the East.
Yeah, Nintendo has started trying to set up sponsored groups. Where they send they send freebies, tell them to set up tournaments. They send old games, get them to set up game days. Like we got sent in Wales. We got sent Nintendo 64 with the game.
Oh, nice.
We got sent the earliest console. Actually, I can't remember what it was called, but we got sent the earliest consoles and games to go with them, brand new, that they've been taken out of the Nintendo storage, and they let us set up a day where we could actually enjoy the old retro gaming. But in those groups, you'll find that they have some of the owners, like our owner in Southwest, had set up subgroups on Facebook. This is all done on Facebook and meetups in person. But he set up a chat for every single game in Nintendo. So the Pokemon chat was full of people who were like, "Oh well, I've got spare time. I'll breed you this. I'll breed you that." And as long as you were willing to put in the effort for training them, they would IV and EV train them with like the mini games and stuff like that, where you didn't have to battle your way through EV training, and then they'd send them out to you. So this was all done through Nintendo, and it was a good community and a good way to find your community. So maybe have a look to see if there's that sort of thing on Facebook. Discord, you can usually find Pokemon YouTubers like myself and David. We both have Discord servers, and we have people in there who would be willing to help you breed. I myself, over some holidays, would be able to help people breed. But yeah.
Well, usually for me as well, I find that the best way to do it is if you're breeding a specific Pokemon, but you know someone else is breeding another Pokemon. Something that I usually do is, like I said, I usually breed more than I need anyway. Is I usually say, hey, look, I'm breeding, I don't know, competitive Ferrothorns at the moment as an example. But I really would like a competitive Incineroar, for example. And if they're breeding Incineroar, I'll be like, do you mind breeding me an extra one and I'll trade you one of the Ferrothorns? Sort of thing. And do it that way because essentially you're getting 2 Pokemon out of it instead of 1 as well. It's little things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I typically breed, keep some of my 5 or 6 IV, what we call Breedjects, which are Pokemon which aren't quite ready for competitive, but only need a little bit more breeding to be. And then I would send those out. So people are still having to breed, but they're not having to breed as much. So they're still getting the experience. They still learn how to do it, but they don't need to put as much work in.
Yeah. And that's another good way. Like a lot of the Pokemon I breed have actually been from Breedjects as well. Even Wonder Trade can still get you a nice stock occasionally.
Yeah, I find that Wonder Trade, as long as you've got your IV checker already, I don't suggest doing it before you got the IV checker,
But once you've got it, you could Wonder Trade and find plenty of rejects. People are always sending them off on there. I myself do sometimes when I got an excess stock of them. So I would suggest once you got your IV checker, which you can get by breeding 30 Pokemon. I think you need
hatching
oh,
20
the
eggs.
20 is it? Okay, but yeah. So once you've got that,
And they don't have to be obtained in your game, as far as I'm aware.
I didn't know that, but yeah.
It's literally just the act of hatching 20 eggs.
But yeah, once you've done
That's it.
that, then you can actually go out, Wonder Trade some rejects of your own, and get a good
You'll
stock.
find that a lot of people just Wonder Trade their rejects off as well.
So yes, you're going to get a lot of level 1s, and they're going to have unusual moves. But these are what we call egg moves. Egg moves are something that can be obtained through breeding, and quite often they'll be moves that you won't be able to get any other way on that Pokemon. Which, David, do you want to cover a bit more about egg moves?
I will be, however, that will be for next episode.
Oh, sorry, I didn't look at.
In the
I didn't look at the plans. I haven't been looking at them this entire time.
As you can tell, we are very well organised.
We organised the plan for both episodes 1 and 2, but
and Alice has sort of merged episode 1 into 1.2 by the look of it.
I've literally had my head back, looking at the ceiling, talking. I haven't looked at my screen and looked at where we are in the episode or what the plan was.
I don't know.
Let's see.
But yeah,
we've covered training.
We were actually going to be discussing team planning. So how do you actually go about planning your team then, Alice?
Okay, so planning the team is, well, it's tricky. Depends on what type of team you want to do. Have you found your playstyle yet? If yes, then try to find what your favorite Pokemon is within your playstyle. So, for example, let's say me with my bulky playstyle. I have Ferrothorn, so I would want to back it up with something that can deal with fire types, because it's major weakness to fire. So maybe I'd have a water type, but because it's bulky, I would have a bulky water type, say Toxapex, and that would help me deal with the fire types. Then, let's say, I want to have some way of closing out the game. So I want to have maybe either a bulky attacker or a fast, fragile attacker, something we call a glass cannon. So let's say for the glass cannon, I have a Greninja. Yes, it's another water type, but protein changes its type. And it has a very nice spread of type advantages. Type advantages are essential. You want to cover as many types as you can, but you only have 6 slots. So the way we go about sorting that out is we'd have maybe 1 or 2 glass cannons. For example, a Greninja with an assault vest means that it would naturally have to have 4 attacking moves. It can and my favorite spread is Dark, Psychic, Ice, Water. That covers a lot of different types in just 4 moves. And that way, you're getting as much type advantage out of one Pokemon as you can. David, do you want to cover a bit more about what type advantage is?
Right, okay, that was unexpected. So yeah, type advantages, and obviously as a result of that, if there's an advantage, it's going to be more effective. So say a fire type being weak to water, it's common sense. But on the opposite end of the spectrum, fire types don't do very much to water types as well. So think of it as a large rock, paper, scissors, just with 18 different types, more or less.
But yeah, so while we're talking about type advantages, we might also want to discuss the different types of Pokemon that can take advantage of this. So we have the physical, and we have the special. Special's already been covered. Greninja is a special, but it can also be mixed. And mixed attackers would take advantage of both the special and physical aspects of the game. So a mon that could use, let's say, Surf, but also at the same time, Earthquake.
Obviously, I'm talking about a Swampert here. But that would mean that you've got 2 different types of attacks. But that's because on the opposite side of attacks, we also have defenders, the mons that are going to take these hits. So, again, I'm going to use Ferrothorn as an example here, not only because it's my mascot, but it's because the mon I know, this Pokemon I know most about. So, a Ferrothorn is definitely a physical tank. This means that it will bulk physical hits all day long. That means you won't want to use an attacker that is physically prioritized. So let's say a Sizzle, as we mentioned earlier in the episode. A Sizzle would use all attacking moves, all physical attacking moves. So it would pair very badly against a Ferrothorn. But let's say Ninetales, not a Alolan, but Cantonian Ninetales. This mon would be very specially offensive. That means that its Fire Blast would do a lot more than a Sizzle's Bullet Punch to a Ferrothorn. So you want to try to have a mix of physical and special attackers, and maybe every now and then have a mixed attacker like Greninja in there to actually send both types of attacks at the same mon to find what its weakness is. But I know that's from a 1v1 side point. David, how does this differ for multiples? How would you structure your team differently?
Now, see, to be fair, there's actually quite a lot of similarities between singles and doubles in that regard. Like, obviously, instead of having what we call a team core, which is typically 2 or 3 Pokemon that synergize really well, we'll have usually 2 Pokemon that are really strong, and then, like we said, with VGC, it's you have 6 Pokemon, but you bring 4 into each battle. Now, those 4 Pokemon will have a combination of an alternate strategy as an alternate win condition for certain matchups, but will also contain Pokemon that will actually support the main 2 Pokemon in achieving their role of winning the game, basically.
So I know we've talked a lot about defensive Pokemon here, and I know we haven't covered everything you need to know for team planning, but we've covered the essentials here. We will be doing a later episode where we will, in detail, cover everything there is to know about team building. However, we don't want to throw you in at the deep end, give you all this information about team building, then you go out and try it, but you don't know the basics about how to competitive battle. So we will eventually help you learn how to team build better, but we'll be giving, I think the best thing we can do here is we'll be giving you a good example of a Pokemon of the day or Pokemon of the week each episode. These will be Pokemon that we have personally prepared to be really, really strong. And these Pokemon have been competitively tested and will therefore serve you well if you wanted to actually go out and use them. So, obviously, we will do an in-depth discussion about what it is to team build. And I know we haven't covered all the different areas in this one. That's why we just wanted to give you the basics. But moving on from team building, we will cover, like I said, come back to that at a later episode. Probably not too long. But as for right now, let's just go on to the Pokemon of the week, which I think, David, can we choose Greninja? It's a nice simple mon to give them a set for, which actually will serve them very strongly. So
yeah, I think Greninja will work.
Yeah, so the set I've got here for you guys that will be on your screen right now. Obviously, you can't see it. We can't both see it. But the set I've got here for you guys it's a Greninja that uses Assault Vest. I covered this in the basics of team building. It's a protein Greninja. So the moveset can be altered slightly depending on your preferences for types. But the types that I found to work the best have been Extrasensory for Psychic, Dark Pulse for Dark, Ice Beam for Ice, and Water Shuriken / Scald. So Water Shuriken or Scald both work, but it depends on if you need priority on your team or not. Obviously, this is going to be a really all-out attacking mon. It uses Assault Vest to make it last a lot longer. It's made for level 100 1v1. So it has 4 in speed, in special defense, 252. So this is the EV spread now. So 4 in special defense, 252 in speed with a boosting speed nature, and 252 in special attack. So this thing is designed to go first. It is designed to be a fast special sweeper, and that means that it's going to be fragile to a degree. Assault Vest helps you with that. So the idea here is you want to try to predict what the opponent's going to throw at you. So if you can predict correctly, you can change your type to something that would resist what they're attacking you with. So let's say they're going to attack you with a Psychic type move. You'd want to change to a Dark type. Obviously, they won't do that on the first turn because you're already a Dark type. But that's just an example. Is there anything you want to input here, David?
Assault Vest?
It's meant to allow it to survive longer. I have actually tried and tested this multiple times, and Assault Vest has come in more handy than a Life Orb. It used to be Life Orb, but Assault Vest just gave it so much more durability.
Now, see, I would, if it was me, I would go for a Timid, which is plus speed minus attack.
Yeah, that's the nature already.
Protein, 252 speed, 252 special attack, 4 in, pretty much whatever. I usually put it in special.
I put it in Spadef, yeah.
And I usually go Water Shuriken, Dark Pulse, Extrasensory, and U-Turn for momentum.
So here's where
and would slap on either a Life Orb or a potential Z.
Here's where the preferences actually comes into effect here. U-Turn would allow you to open up for things like Life Orb, where you don't care about losing the life, and it's what's known as then a pivot. So this would come in first, scout the opponent, switch with another Pokemon that possibly also has either U-Turn or Volt Switch. But that's also where Greninja's very, very large move pool actually comes into consideration. It can be used in so many different ways with so many different items that it's hard to actually please everyone. I will have a U-Turn set that David just described up on the screen for you as well while David was talking there. So obviously we'll sort that out in editing, but that's the sort of area we are both looking at. So we both look from a different perspective. Obviously the moveset that I gave you wouldn't work in doubles, but the moveset David gave you, I believe, would work in doubles?
No, that's actually more of a singles one. If I was to actually make it a doubles one, I would go
Surf instead of Water Shuriken.
No, I would actually keep Water Shuriken. I'd probably go Water Shuriken, Mat Block. What else? Possibly Extrasensory, and the other move would probably have to be Ice Beam, mainly for like guard jump, things like that.
Ice Beams are pretty much an essential.
Or Protect.
Ice Beam is pretty much essential for Greninja.
Yeah.
Maybe Protect over Extrasensory.
So it would probably be Protect or Extrasensory at that stage.
Flinching in doubles isn't as important as flinching in singles, purely because of the fact that you got.
I don't know. A Rock Slide flinch can actually.
Rock Slide is different because Rock Slide hits both. The reason being, if a move like Ash Sensory flinching one Pokemon, you still have the other Pokemon to deal with. But
I've seen VGC players be crazy enough to go for that, to be fair.
I have as well. I've been one of them.
I think we all have at some point.
But anyway, thank you everyone for listening. This has been the first episode of our Pokemon podcast. We hope that you've learned something today, and I hope that you will come back for future episodes. David, do you want to have anything said in the closing credits, or?
Well, the one thing I would like to ask is in regards to a name for the podcast. It's an idea that I have put forward, and I have asked Alice about it. But feel free to put something in the comment section as to whether you think it's a nice idea or a good name. That being Trainer's Corner.
Yes, Trainer's Corner. I completely forgot that we were using Trainer's Corner. I am sorry about that, guys. Obviously, that will be fixed in the next episode.
Or if you've got any other suggestions.
If you have any other suggestions, we will take them into consideration. Also, if you have any questions at all that you would like to be answered on the podcast, please drop them in the comments down below. They will be answered possibly in episode 3, or we'll keep them for a future episode if we think that they will suit a future episode. But as for right now, thank you everyone for listening, and I will talk to you soon.